Hello, welcome to Social Leopards. I'm Beth. Are you someone who sometimes, or often, starts a new motivational routine that you take on with all your heart, feeling super motivated in the moment, and then you find yourself burning out pretty quickly? And then you're left dealing with the shame spiral that dominates your thoughts for the next several days or weeks? I'm going to share an article titled, The 2 a.m. Urge to Reinvent Your Entire Life. It was written by Lina, who has a newsletter called the ADHD Journal. But don't skip this episode quite yet. Give me a minute here. Even though this article is written in the context of how an ADHD brain operates, I found it to be engaging and relatable. Everyone is different, right? And knowing a little more about how people who struggle with ADHD process information is important to realizing how we all need to be patient with our fellow humans. We don't all process information in the same way, right? It gave me a deeper appreciation of how some people experience life. At the same time, I have some of the same urges to reinvent my life on occasion, and I do struggle with having a pretty active mind sometimes in the middle of the night. Even though my root cause may be different, the guidance that Lina provides is completely applicable to any audience. What I mean is, these words relate to anyone who has experienced overwhelm or frustration. For me personally, it speaks to my perfectionist side. Lina's words are relatable to any of us who struggle to feel motivated for the million different reasons we lack motivation. So basically, I think what I'm saying is that it covers, most of humankind. I think so. And side note, if you like imagery, Lina tends to incorporate animal pics. She has a different one to accompany each post, and this one really captured my eye. It had a cute and funny picture of a hamster reaching out to grab this extra large person-sized cup of coffee. Such a great little eye treat to accompany the article. It really just is one extra reason to go check out her page when you have a moment. I have, of course, included a link in the show notes. Oh, wow. I already started reflecting, I think, prior to reading the article today. Let me go back a little bit here. I'll repeat the title and then I'll include the byline this time. The article is called The 2 a.m. Urge to Reinvent Your Entire Life, aka the ADHD Classic, Shame Spiral, New Routine, Instant Burnout. Okay, I'm ready to share this with you. Are you ready? Here we go. It's 2:17 a.m. You're standing in the kitchen eating toast straight from the toaster, half watching a motivational YouTube video about changing your life, half scrolling TikTok at the same time. Somewhere between the fifth TikTok about becoming your best self and the third YouTube guy yelling about discipline, it hits you. New morning routine, new Notion template, new version of you. You're going to start running at 5 a.m., even though you hate mornings. You're going to build a new Notion dashboard with tabs for mind, body, soul. You're going to fix your sleep schedule, email backlog, skincare routine, and inner child preferably by Thursday. It feels urgent, like a second chance, like if you don't change tonight, you'll never will. This isn't a meltdown. It's a survival mechanism. Here's what your brain is actually doing. ADHD brains run on an interest-based nervous system. That means your brain doesn't respond to importance, it responds to emotional urgency. When your day has been boring, directionless, or low reward, your brain scrambles for stimulation, any kind. Reinventing yourself, that's a dopamine bomb. Planning feels like safety. ADHDers struggle with emotional regulation. So when you feel ashamed, scattered, or overwhelmed, your brain tries to cope by giving you a project. Suddenly, you're not spiraling, you're rebranding. The reward system is underactive. Studies show the ADHD brain has lower baseline dopamine, especially in the mesolimbic pathway, the one that fuels motivation and goal-directed behavior. Creating a new routine lights up those circuits. It's exciting. It feels like momentum. Sleep-deprived brains get weirder. At 2 a.m., the part of your brain that's supposed to be logical, prefrontal cortex, sleep-deprived brains get weirder. At 2 a.m., the part of your brain that's supposed to be logical, prefrontal cortex, is half asleep. Meanwhile, the part that runs on impulse and emotion, limbic system, is wide awake and yelling, "Let's reinvent our entire life right now!" Why it feels so real when you're doing it. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and go for a run. I'm cutting caffeine and journaling daily. I'll finally become someone who replies to emails. It's not fake. You do want to change. But ADHD brains tend to chase idealized identity instead of practical action. You're not just planning habits, you're planning a self who never gets tired, one who doesn't lose momentum, forget passwords, never falls behind. Why it doesn't stick? Because ADHD isn't a disorder of knowing what to do, it's a disorder of doing what you know. By the time you're supposed to start the plan, the dopamine is gone. The energy is gone. The version of you who cared so deeply about becoming a calendar person is gone. Now the plan feels like pressure, or shame, or weirdly aggressive. And your brain defaults to the usual: avoidance, scrolling, paralysis. Not because you're lazy, because your executive function didn't agree to that plan. It just watched you make it at 2 a.m. and went, "Good luck with that." Why your brain does this, and why it's not all bad. ADHD is often framed as dysfunction, but from an evolutionary perspective, many ADHD traits were survival assets. A brain that seeks stimulation, scans constantly, and changes directions fast, that's a brain built for high-threat, high-novelty environments. Planning your whole new life at 2 a.m.? That's your brain trying to escape the trap of shame and get back into motion. It's trying to hit restart because the current version feels stuck. Yes, it burns out fast, but it's your nervous system throwing a rope toward hope. What actually helps, and not in a just wake up earlier way. Plan for the lowest version of you. The one who's tired, overstimulated, and slightly dehydrated. If that version wouldn't follow the routine, it won't last. Start with frictionless scaffolding. One anchor habit, one reminder, one external cue. ADHD brains thrive with scaffolding, not full architecture built overnight. Externalize it immediately. If you don't write it down, it won't happen. Not because you didn't care, but because your working memory is basically a whiteboard in the rain. Give yourself a cool-down clause. Before you start rebranding your entire personality, pause. Wait until morning. If it still feels right at 10 a.m., then build it. Don't shame the spark. The plan might not be sustainable, but the part of you that wanted change, that was real. You don't have to build a whole new life just to feel like you're moving again. Final note from the tabs. It won't always stick, and that's okay. You are someone who reaches for better, even in chaos. Just don't build for a version of yourself that never gets tired. Build for the one who's here now, blanket wrapped, 2 a.m. Googling, still trying. That version deserves structure too, even if they abandon it and rebuild again next week. The end. I have to admit, narrating this article stirred something in me. There's a gentle wisdom here, a kind of compassionate realism that I see in writing, but rarely hear about out loud. So often we're told to push through, to optimize, to become the version of ourselves who's always on. The person who never gets tired, never fails, always sticks to the plan. But this piece, it invites us to build for the parts of us that actually show up. I'm allowed to be tired. I'm allowed to get distracted. I'm allowed to wrap up in a blanket and occasionally Google at 2 a.m. Let's start with the point that stuck with me the most. Externalize it immediately. That hit home for me. I've lost count of the number of ideas or inspirational moments or even simple to-do list types of things that have vanished into thin air because I trusted my memory to hold them. The metaphor of working memory as a whiteboard in the rain was super accurate for me personally. Writing things down isn't just an act of record keeping. It's a gesture of self-trust. It's saying, this idea is valuable, even if right now I can't do anything about it. Then there's the cool down clause. How many times have I felt that rush of excitement, that urge to overhaul something, like a routine or maybe even my whole identity? And that has happened to me before. Only to later think about it again, and the next thought through your mind is something like, whatever possessed me? The advice to give pause, to wait until morning. It's such a simple reminder, but it's one that's necessary, apparently. It's not about killing the spark. It's about letting that spark mature. Which leads me right into the next point. Don't shame the spark. This, I think, is the heart of the article. The part that wants change is real and worth honoring, even if the plan fizzles out. There's this undertone of grace, which is one of the things I constantly remind myself to give myself. It's forgiving myself for not being perfectly consistent, for wanting and trying and sometimes failing. We don't need to bring every new idea to reality, but we also don't need to berate ourselves for being moved by possibility in the first place. And that final note, a nice summary for those of us who never quite stick to a plan. That struck a chord. You are someone who reaches for better even in chaos. I love that. There's dignity there. There's hope. I think so many of us feel guilty for being restless, not following through, for always changing our structures and our routines. But in reality, that urge to try again, to rebuild, it's its own kind of resilience. We don't have to build anything for a fantasy version of ourselves. We all get tired. We're all going to lose motivation sometimes. Instead, we can build for the person we are right now, knowing that we have the right to abandon today's plan next week, but we're going to keep reaching anyway. Reflecting on these words makes me realize how much self-compassion is missing from so many of those productivity videos and all that advice that's out there. Personally, I'm going to give myself the permission to ebb and flow, to change course. Hopefully something in this article also resonated with you. I think that where I landed is here. The journey of life isn't about becoming perfect. It's about staying present to who you are moment to moment and offering flexibility, grace, and permission to reimagine whenever you feel it's necessary. It's kind of a freeing way to look at life, at least in my humble opinion. So that wraps up my thoughts for today's episode. I do want to take a moment to share next week. I am exploring an article about achieving better sleep. It comes from Tara Parker Pope, who founded the Well section of the New York Times and is also a Substack creator. As someone who struggles to fall asleep and stay asleep, this one was very encouraging for me personally. Thanks so much for listening. Until next week, take care.